Warning: the following program may contain language and other elements that are not suitable for some audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. You've been fucking warned.
I'm gonna put a little salt in the atmosphere. I'm gonna make your mouth perspire. I'm gonna make a little treat guaranteed to be sweet. I'm gonna teach you how to dance with fire. Yeah, baby, let's get dishing. Step into my musician kitchen.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Musician Kitchen. So today I am going to make homemade mayonnaise. Now, a couple of things. Number one, the reason I even thought of this is that I was at the store the other day trying to find a mayonnaise that, I don't have like 20 bucks to spend on a jar of fucking mayonnaise. So I'm like, within a reasonable cost, is there something that isn't just loaded with bullshit that I shouldn't be putting in my body? And lo and behold, there was not. There's like soybean oil, canola oil, all this GMO shit. Like, I can take one ingredient maybe, but there was just so much crap and I actually got really pissed off. So there I am in the middle of the store. I'm like, fuck it. Pull the phone out. Look for a recipe. Okay, good. This is pretty easy. I have all but one of these things in my house. Great. Picked up the one thing I needed. So here's the deal. I'm going to make this mayonnaise. It is based on a recipe. I'll put the link below to the original recipe for it. It looks good to me. It's very simple. A very inexpensive mayonnaise, and if this works, this may just be a fucking game changer and something I'm really excited and hoping to use for one of my episodes coming up. That was the other reason that I was like, I should just do this because this will be so much better and probably taste better. It'll be fresh. But anyway, here we go. We are going to make homemade mayonnaise. Stay tuned. All right, now on this mayonnaise, by the way, I didn't do this before, but we're going to be using egg, right? Raw egg, sea salts. Woo, yeah. I am going to use some black pepper. It's not actually part of the original recipe. I am altering this recipe a bit, as I tend to do. Cider vinegar. Now, the recipe, again, calls for, I think, red or white wine vinegar. I'm going with the cider vinegar. A, it's what I got, and B, I kind of like it, and I think it'll be just fine. The acidity level shouldn't be too dissimilar. Dijon mustard for the win. It says to use the juice of a fresh lime. The store I was at, again, one more reason to be pissed off at them is they did not have any limes, literally, except for these little teeny tiny bullshit ones that would have no juice in them. And so I was just like, no. So I'm using lime juice. It'll be good enough for what we're doing. And then I am also adding a clove of garlic to the mix here because I'm feeling like a garlic mayonnaise for the thing that I have coming up. So first thing is you want your egg to be about room temperature. So keep that in mind for sure. Also, you want to have paper towel handy. Have a paper towel handy for wiping your hands because you're probably going to need it after the egg. I'm going to be using a boat motor blender, I call it, by the way, because, again, it's kind of just what I have right now. You may have seen these. It's also called an immersion blender. Really, that's what it's called. I call it a boat motor because it looks like a fucking boat motor. And it'll just be using that along with this cup here that I have that came with the immersion blender. And that is how we will do our blending process. So anyway, back to our egg. Cracking and putting into the blender bowl. And another thing that I liked about this recipe, most mayonnaise recipes, as I understand it, and is even acknowledged by this recipe, call for a complete egg, a full egg. This one, for a separated egg. I think it's just the yolk usually goes in the mayonnaise. So this one intentionally does not do that. Apparently it still works out great. I'm kind of excited because that means there's going to be more protein in the mayonnaise, which I consider a good thing. So anyway, here we go. I'm going to blend this for about 20 seconds. And I will turn the sound off and give you some music because I'm sure the last thing you want to hear is me blending. I'm going to blend it on a high. And so we're going to do that, and I'll be back for the next step. Stay tuned. All right, so that's about 20 seconds of blending, 20 seconds of loving in there. So I'm going to set that aside. Now the next thing I'm going to add in is three things. My Dijon mustard, I'm going to put about a tablespoon of that in there. I'm not going to be super worried about measuring this part. So again, I haven't even opened this yet. It's a fresh Dijon mustard. How exciting is that? I love Dijon. All right. So 1 tablespoon of Dijon. Yeah, come on. That seems about right. And then 1 tablespoon of my vinegar, which I'm actually not going to shake this vinegar because it's got the mother in it and I don't actually want that in my mayonnaise. So again, going for about a tablespoon. And that's about right. And then salt, and then this is where I'm going to vary a bit. It calls for pepper as well. And it says, you know, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, give or take, depending on your taste. I'm going to start with about that just because I haven't done this recipe before. And I want to try to at least be somewhat to it, at least when it comes to more pertinent things like that. I am going to throw a little bit of pepper in there too now, though. Again, probably a similar amount, maybe a hair less, but between 1/8 and 1/4 of a teaspoon. Sorry about that, I just realized that my camera had fallen. So anyway, what we've done, just to recap, is we've put a tablespoon of Dijon, tablespoon of vinegar, about a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and now I added about another 1/8 to 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. So now we're going to blend this for another 20 seconds on high heat. Here we go. All right. Now, a note, by the way, is that you actually can do this in a regular blender. It's fine, you know. So just know that. And when I do use this hand blender, what I will do sometimes is as I'm blending, I will also kind of move up and down a little bit just to get things moving underneath the blender, making sure everything gets blended. That's just a little pro tip technique thing. Okay, so the next thing is we're going to add a cup of oil. I am using extra virgin olive oil. You know, feel free to use any oil you like. There's an endless possibility with that. And what we're going to do here is it's going to be a cup of this. And we are going to put this in kind of slowly, a few drops at a time, and really let this blend, because if we do not do that, you will have issues with emulsification. You will have issues with, essentially, you're going to end up with just really soupy mayonnaise, is how that works. So doing this part of the process just right is very, very important. And this is the point where, as we do it, if we do this right, the mayonnaise will start to thicken up and become, you know, what you would typically think of as mayonnaise in all of its creamy glory. All right. So good. So I'm just going to add a little bit of this. A very small amount. Let's blend that. All right, we'll add a little bit more. And what we're looking for is for this to start thickening up, right? Once it starts getting thicker, we can go a little faster with the oil. So it does seem like it's starting to thicken up a little bit. It's coating my blender a little more. I'm going to speed the rest of this up. Basically, I'm adding a bit, like, I don't know, maybe a teaspoon at a time, even less is what I'm trying to add, until I start really noticing a thickness thing happening here, which it is starting to happen. I'm still going to keep going slow because it's not quite like the thickness and creaminess. So I'm going to speed all this up, but I'm going to just be adding and adding and adding slowly on this until we get a nice creamy mayonnaise. Just watch for that and enjoy the music. And I just want to show you here, we're almost through our oil and we're now really starting to get that nice creaminess. Still a little drippy, but that nice mayonnaise creaminess, and that tastes so good. So I'm going to finish up my whipping. I'm actually, so I'm going to finish up with the oil. Then I'm going to add my lime juice and my garlic clove. And then I'll probably end up putting a little more salt and pepper in this because that's just how I am. So stay tuned for the rest of the blending, and then we'll get on to adding those last few things, and then we'll have some motherfucking mayonnaise. Here we go. So, now one thing to note, this is mayonnaise, but this is not store-bought mayonnaise, so there's not a fuck ton of preservatives in it. So I don't anticipate it being quite as dense as store-bought, okay? Because there's preservatives and stuff in there. But what I'm going to do is, well, first I'm actually going to mince up some garlic. I'm not going to worry too much about the mince because it's going into a blender anyway, but Take 1 clove. This is a bit of a big clove. I like garlic, so I'm okay with that. You may not. If you don't, if you're not as big on garlic, you just want a hint of flavor, use a smaller clove. Again, this is probably what I would term as a large clove. You can use 1/2 that size. It'd be fine for just a little hint. Yeah. All right. So we'll get that into our blender bowl. Along with a little bit of salt. Probably do another about 1/4 teaspoon. Another 1/8-ish of a teaspoon of pepper. Bink. And then I'm going to do some lime juice. I'm going to go for about a teaspoon on this-ish. Yeah, that'll be fine. Let's blend that up. All right, and that right there is mayonnaise. So I'm going to take a little taste of this. Oh boy, that is pretty goddamn delicious. So again, that was all being done on a high blend. So yeah, homemade mayonnaise. You can probably blend it for longer. Now, one thing to note too is your mayo is going to be a little warm because this blender, when you blend things like that at high speed, it warms them up. So keep that in mind. Also, if you feel like your blender's overheating, if it's been working hard, this is an alright blender. It's not really ideal for this, so it's not super high horsepower. So right now it's getting a little hot. Just kind of keep an eye on your blender base. Don't overheat it. But otherwise, yeah, it's a very simple recipe. I'm very interested to try this out on some sandwiches. I'm going to blend it a little bit more actually here on a lower speed.
Welcome to the freak show, baby. No one left to hear you scream.
And one thing I'm actually going to try is I'm going to refrigerate this and kind of see. Oh, it's so good. Because I'm realizing the heat could be making this seem more liquidy than it actually is. So I'm going to put this in the fridge and let it sit and see if it firms up a little bit more. And then we'll come back for a final look. So I'm going to let this sit in the fridge for probably about an hour. Stay tuned for the final look at this. All right, so we got our mayonnaise out of the fridge. It's been in there probably like 50 minutes, not quite an hour, but just looking at this here, it definitely thickened up. It's still got almost more of like a, oh, that's good. More of a ranch dressing kind of a thing happening. So I did check the website for this recipe. One thing you can do to thicken it up a little bit more is to add a little bit more mustard to it. Also, if you want, and I'm going to add like another 1/2 teaspoon, something like that. I don't want to go too hog wild. You can also add an egg yolk, and then you just whisk this in. You're getting some aeration happening. Yeah, just a little bit here, but it's honestly fine. Like, I mean, like I said, it doesn't have all the preservatives you would tend to find in a store-bought mayonnaise, so I'm kind of okay with the fact that it's a little bit looser. It's still plenty thick enough to serve as a delicious, as a delicious mayonnaise spread for your sandwich or whatever you're using it for. And I do actually have on the hand blender I have, by the way, I actually have a whisk thing on there. I'm not using it. I'm actually kind of curious. I kind of want to try it next time I do this, just to see if that makes a difference, because the whisk, of course, will have more of an aerating effect. But I digress. I'm not getting the blender out again, because fuck it. I got a hand whisk, and I don't need to be lazy all the time. Alright. Let's see here. Yeah. Honestly, it didn't even make that much of a difference. So, I'm going to say this is fine where it is. Now, one thing I'm noticing, and again, I didn't measure things super tightly, but a little bit, it's a very tangy mayonnaise, which I personally am okay with. If you want it a little less tangy, a little bit less on the lime juice, or lemon juice is actually technically what this recipe calls for. I use limes because I just like lime better, but also a little bit less on the cider vinegar. Don't go too much less because, I mean, it is something that has to do with the composition of the recipe, but also if you use less on those things, that would probably lend to it staying thicker as a mayonnaise goes, you know. This is something I will continue to play around with, but for now, I'm pretty happy with this, actually. One thought I had, too, is making a jalapeno mayonnaise where I actually blend in some jalapenos. That could be a fun thing. The other thing on this mayonnaise, by the way, is that for the amount of it, even though I used the big clove of garlic, I think I would probably go with 2 cloves. with all the acidity in here from the lime juice and the vinegar. I'm finding it seems like that's cutting across the garlic, so I can taste it a bit. But if you really like garlic, I would probably even add more garlic to this, and it'll just be, you know, beautiful. So there you go, guys. Homemade mayonnaise. Again, this is, I'm excited, and this is born out of frustration, but definitely very, very cool. A very cool recipe. You know, I'm excited about it and to try doing different kinds of mayonnaises with it and such. And, you know, I'll continue playing around with ways to get it emulsifying more and maybe thickening up in some natural ways that don't involve fucked up preservatives that tend to get put in these things when you buy them in the store. So, guys, until next video, I'm Johnny Farrow. This has been Musician Kitchen, and I'll see you later. Mwah!